"We don't need you there," my dad said. I just wrote back, "Understood." Then I quietly reversed the payment on the birthday cake, froze the group card app, and notified the restaurant about a dispute in progress. First, they laughed at me in the family chat. But later, at 7:32 p.m., my sister texted, "Why is everything falling apart?" Finally, I received 18 desperate calls. If anything like that happened to me now, I'd cut them off instantly. No second chances, no calls, no carefully worded messages, just silence. And that would be the end of it. But back then, I was still giving them too much credit. Still thinking maybe I was the one who needed to try harder. Still hoping that if I kept showing up, they'd eventually treat me like I belonged, like family. So, when my dad texted me, "We don't need you there," I didn't blow up. I didn't even feel surprised, I just felt hollow. It wasn't a question. It wasn't, "Hey, we've got things covered," or, "We're keeping it small this year." It was just a 6-word confirmation of something I think I already knew. I wasn't part of the family, just the convenience. It stung more than I expected. Not because I wanted to be at that dinner, I honestly didn't, but because of how quickly they decided I was disposable. This was his 60th birthday, a milestone, and I had done all the work, the cake, the reservations, the car, all of it. My mom pretended she was running things, but I was the one quietly holding the whole production together. My sister? She sent one passive-aggressive voice note in the planning group chat about how I was micromanaging everything, and then disappeared for a week. Standard. So yeah, when he told me I wasn't needed, I took it seriously. I replied, "I understand," and I meant it. That's when the switch flipped. First, I called the bakery. They were a small boutique place on the edge of town, and I'd gone out of my way to book them weeks in advance. The cake was custom, designed like a football field with a mini edible figure of my dad holding a tiny trophy. Dad of the Year, it said in gold icing. I didn't even ask for a refund. I just told them the party was off and to dispose of the cake however they saw fit. They hesitated, asked if I was sure, and I said yes. I've never heard a more satisfying click than the one that call ended with. Next, I logged into the group card. I'd upgraded the account to premium out of my own pocket so they could all upload photos and leave voice messages. It had turned out pretty good, some genuine memories mixed with the usual shallow nonsense. But they hadn't thought twice about who set it up. I did. So I removed everyone's access, permanently closed the card, and deleted the admin email. That piece of digital sentimentality? Gone. Then I called the restaurant. A reservation for 14 people at one of the most obnoxiously pretentious spots in town. I'd put down the deposit using my card. I told the manager there might be a payment issue and that I was no longer responsible for the reservation. I didn't cancel it, I let it burn on its own. For the next hour, my phone buzzed nonstop. The family group chat was in full swing. My mom posted a picture of herself doing her makeup, captioned, "Ready for a perfect evening," with heart emojis. My sister replied, "Can't wait to eat myself into a coma," followed by one of those obnoxious animated stickers. They were acting like nothing had changed. Then at 7:32 p.m., my sister texted again. This time, no stickers, no emojis. "Why is everything falling apart?" I opened the chat just long enough to see the chaos start to spill out. The restaurant had called my mom, asking for a backup credit card before they would seat anyone. Apparently, no one brought theirs. The bakery had phoned the house to confirm the cancellation, and she hadn't known what they were talking about. Then someone tried to access the group card, only to find a broken link and an error message. The best part? All their friends were already there, dressed up, waiting, watching them scramble. The call started right after that, 18 of them, one after another. I watched my phone light up from the couch while I ate leftover noodles and streamed a documentary. I didn't answer any of them. The last call was from my dad. For the first time in years, the silence felt like control. That night was supposed to be about him, but without me, it turned into something else entirely, a public disaster, a mess. And no one could fix it because the only person who could have saved it, the person they didn't need, was gone. And they hadn't even seen the worst of it yet. I thought they'd cool off after a day or two, maybe send a half-hearted message trying to patch things up. But no, what I got instead was my father standing at my front door 3 days later with a suitcase in one hand and rage barely contained in the other. He didn't ask, he walked right in like it was still his house, like I owed him something. I just stood there watching him drop his bag by the hallway closet, acting like we were about to have a family reunion instead of a fallout. The first hour was quiet. He made himself coffee, sat on the couch like it was his own, and didn't mention the ruined birthday. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "You embarrassed this family." Not, "You hurt us." Not, "Why did you do it?" Just that I embarrassed them. That's all he cared about. Not that I'd spent weeks organizing his party. Not that I'd been shut out of it without warning, but that the night turned into a disaster and his friends saw it happen. That was unforgivable to him. Appearances were everything. I didn't say much, I just listened. I wanted to see where he'd take it. He wanted an apology, a public one, preferably in the family chat. He said I humiliated them and made a scene. My mom had cried, apparently. My sister had left the dinner early. He kept listing everyone else's feelings like they were bullet points on a legal document. I didn't react. I didn't argue. I just told him the truth. If you wanted me there, you could have said that. You didn't. I respected that. He hated that answer. Over the next few days, the mood in my apartment dropped to somewhere between courtroom and hostage negotiation. My mom joined him 2 days later because apparently she couldn't let him fight this battle alone. She didn't even knock, she just showed up with a bag and an attitude. They took over my place like I was a guest in it. They criticized my furniture, complained about the lack of real food in the fridge, and asked me why I didn't have curtains in the guest room. Then they circled back again and again to the same topic: the birthday, the party, the disgrace. They needed me to admit I went too far, that I'd acted out, that I let a little misunderstanding turn into a scandal. But I didn't. And every time I refused, my dad got angrier, and my mom got colder. By the end of the week, I had heard the phrase, "You owe this family," more times than I could count. That's when I lost it. I told them flat out that if they didn't drop it, I'd cut them off. That they'd pushed this way too far. And if they didn't stop trying to guilt me into crawling back, I'd do more than disappear from a birthday, I'd disappear completely. No calls, no visits, no financial help. They laughed. Not because they thought I was joking, but because they didn't believe I had it in me. So, I made a phone call. The kitchen renovation they'd been planning, the one I had already paid the deposit on because their credit was maxed out again, I canceled the payment. I told the contractor there was a change in financial responsibility and that he needed to wait for a new deposit from the homeowners. Then, I told my parents exactly what I did. My dad went pale. My mom started calling me cruel. I told them it wasn't about revenge, it was about freedom. I had done too much for people who thought I was nothing more than an ATM with a conscience. I thought that might be the end of it. But then my sister got involved. And if I thought the family had already hit rock bottom, I was wrong. It was about to get worse. Much worse. The first message from my sister hit me like a mosquito bite: annoying, predictable, easy to ignore. "So, you're just going to leave them like that?" I stared at it for a few seconds, then turned off my screen and went back to making lunch. I knew this was coming. I even knew it would be her. She's always the first to jump in when something threatens the family's image. Not because she cares, but because she's afraid someone might actually notice how fragile the whole illusion really is. A day later, another message: "They're not eating. Mom hasn't slept. You made your point." And then an hour after that, a voice message. I didn't listen to it. I knew the tone without hearing a word, that smug blend of concern and accusation she'd mastered since she was 16. She was always the golden child, perfect GPA, popular, never wrong. Our parents acted like she walked on clouds. I was the one they handed the check to when the clouds got expensive. She must have realized I wasn't responding because the next day she just showed up. Didn't call, didn't text, just buzzed my apartment mid-morning like she was stopping by for brunch. I let her up, not because I wanted to see her, but because I wanted to hear her say it to my face. She came in carrying a to-go coffee like this was just a casual drop-in. Looked around like she expected me to offer her something. I didn't. "You really going to drag this out?" she said. I asked her what exactly she thought I was dragging out. She didn't answer that. She just launched into a prepared speech, something rehearsed, like she'd practiced it in the mirror. She said Mom had been having chest pains, that Dad was too humiliated to go to work, that people were talking, that I had single-handedly humiliated the entire family, and for what? Revenge. I didn't say a word, so she doubled down. She told me I needed to fix it, that I had taken things too far, that this was just a misunderstanding and the mature thing would be to apologize, to stop making things worse than they were. I asked her one thing: where were you when they told me I wasn't needed? She blinked, didn't respond, pretended not to hear it. So, I asked again, slower this time: where were you when they said I didn't need to be at Dad's birthday? When I paid for everything? When I held that whole mess together behind the scenes, where were you? She said nothing. Then, in true family fashion, she flipped it. She said I was too sensitive, that I blew everything out of proportion, and that everyone's hurting right now. She said she was trying to fix things because no one else could, as if that made her noble, as if that made me the villain. That's when I brought up the renovation. You know that new kitchen Mom keeps bragging about? That's my money. I paid the deposit. I canceled it. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't look surprised. So, I asked her if she even knew they hadn't thanked me. Not once. Not for the cake. Not for the card. Not for the reservation. Not even for paying for their house upgrade. They didn't say thank you. They said, "We don't need you there." She told me I was being spiteful, that I was weaponizing money, that I should have come to them like an adult instead of playing games. I told her the real game was the one where I was expected to pour myself out for people who wouldn't cross the room for me. She said she couldn't believe how selfish I'd become. I told her I was learning from the best. That's when she left. No goodbye, no hug, just muttered something under her breath and slammed the door. She texted me 2 hours later. A long message full of buzzwords: emotional manipulation, gaslighting, family trauma. As if quoting therapy jargon made her right. Then came the real gem, a group text from all three of them, pages long, about healing, reconciliation, and how I needed to stop withholding love and support as a form of control. They made it sound like I was running a ransom operation, like I hadn't just been pushed out and disrespected by the people I kept bailing out. I didn't respond. I didn't even read it all the way through. I just hit block on the thread. And for the first time in years, I felt peace. Not relief, not vengeance, just stillness. They wanted me to feel guilt. What I felt was clarity. I figured that would be the end of it. I blocked the group thread. I didn't respond to anyone. I went back to work, cleaned the apartment, rebooked the kitchen contractor for myself. This time, I had this strange calm, like I just walked out of a cult. Everything was quieter, simpler. No guilt trips, no fake affection. No, can you do us a quick favor? Then, 5 days after I blocked the thread, I got a letter in my mailbox, handwritten, no envelope, just folded once and tucked into the slot like someone didn't want it traced. All it said was, "Can we talk?" I'm not like them. No signature. At first, I thought it was from my sister. She had always been the type to spin herself as the exception, but the handwriting was shaky, older, not hers. I checked the apartment camera footage and found something I hadn't expected: my aunt, Dad's sister. I hadn't seen her in years. She was the only one in the family who had ever questioned things, quietly, of course. I remember her pulling me aside once when I was a teenager, saying I didn't have to carry so much for everyone, that I could say no. But I hadn't listened. I thought she just didn't understand. I called the number she scribbled on the back of the page. She picked up on the first ring. She asked me to meet her at this old diner near her house, one of those places with the plastic menus and burnt coffee. I went mostly out of curiosity. She looked older, tired, but calm. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't start with small talk. She said, "I know you canceled the renovation." I waited for the judgment, but it didn't come. Then she pulled out a file from her bag and slid it across the table. I didn't touch it. She said, "Your dad asked me to co-sign a loan to cover it. He said you pulled out to punish them, that you were unstable." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so on brand. She said she didn't co-sign, not because she was defending me, but because she didn't trust them. Then she leaned forward and said something that made my stomach turn. "You're not the only one they've used. Your sister has credit cards under your mom's name. They maxed one out last month booking a vacation. They told her you'd cover the fees." That stopped me cold. A vacation? While they were calling me cruel, unstable, manipulative, they were planning a beach trip and putting it on someone else's name, assuming I'd just sweep in and fix it like always. I asked her why she was telling me this. She said, "Because I think you're finally ready to stop cleaning up their messes." I opened the file, credit reports, screenshots, copies of statements, everything documented. My name wasn't on any of it, but the patterns were obvious. They'd done this before. Signed things, borrowed things, promised things, counting on me to bail them out if it caught up with them. I left the diner with the file and a strange sense of energy. Not rage, not sadness, just resolve. I went home, pulled up my bank app, and locked every card, froze every authorized user, cut off anything tied to them. Then I wrote an email, not to them, but to the lawyer I'd quietly consulted a year ago when I first suspected they were using my information for financial leverage. Subject line: ready. I wasn't just walking away now, I was shutting the door and locking it behind me. Cutting off the accounts felt like unplugging something that had been draining me for years. There was no explosion, no grand meltdown, just a quiet shift in power I hadn't realized I still had. But it didn't stay quiet for long. 3 days later, I woke up to find a string of emails from a resort in Puerto Rico. One of them had a $3,950 balance. Another had my mother's name on the booking, but the contact email was my sister's. I read them twice. Turns out they'd booked a vacation behind my back: Mom, Dad, my sister, and even her boyfriend, assuming I'd pay for it like I always did. But the balance hadn't cleared because I had shut everything down. That same afternoon, my sister called. I answered. She didn't say hello, just launched right into it. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I stayed quiet. She ranted for a full 3 minutes. Said I'd embarrassed them during Dad's birthday. Fine, whatever. But now I was actively trying to financially sabotage them, that I was hurting Mom's credit, that the resort was threatening legal action, that she might lose her job if this showed up on a background check. I asked her why she booked the trip in Mom's name. She said, "Because that's how we've always done it." And there it was. That quiet confession that they'd been doing this for years, using each other's names, shifting balances, moving debt around like furniture, hoping I'd eventually come along to clean up the room. I told her I wasn't doing that anymore. "You think cutting us off makes you better than us?" she asked. "No," I said, "it makes me free." She said I was acting out, said this wasn't like me. Said she knew the real me and this bitter version was just a phase. I told her this was the real me, finally. That I wasn't punishing anyone, I was just stepping away from people who had turned me into a tool, a financial tool, an emotional sponge, a background character in their little performance of dysfunction. Then she got quiet. Really quiet. And then she said it: "You're not family anymore." She didn't scream it. She said it like she was telling me the weather: cold, Final. And you know what? It still hit. Not because it wasn't true, but because I'd been holding on to a version of her, a version of all of them, that never really existed. I think part of me always hoped that one of them would see through the chaos, step up, say, we were wrong. But instead, they buried themselves in their own lies so deep they couldn't even recognize the hand pulling them out. I didn't yell. I didn't fight. I just said, okay. She hung up. That night, I sat on my couch with a glass of water and opened every file I had. I removed them from all accounts, locked down every document, and finalized the legal paperwork that would sever them from anything tied to my name, emergency contacts, health proxies, bank authorizations. And then I did something unexpected. I wrote them a letter, not to send, just to write. I told them everything, how I used to stay up at night wondering why I wasn't enough, how I blamed myself every time they fought, every time they excluded me. How I kept thinking if I just worked harder, paid more, smiled longer, they'd change. But they didn't. And now I didn't need them to. I folded the letter and burned it in the kitchen sink. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like burial. A week later, I was standing in line at the grocery store, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, I wasn't waiting for anyone to text me. I wasn't checking my account for suspicious charges. I wasn't bracing for someone else's chaos to land in my lap. I was just standing there, and I realized I didn't miss them. I missed who I thought they were. You think walking away from family is like slamming a door. Like there's going to be this echo, something loud, something final. But the truth is, it's more like turning off a faucet. The noise stops, but at first the silence feels wrong, like you forgot something. I expected chaos, a last stand, maybe even guilt-laced apologies. What I got instead was nothing. Complete, deliberate silence. Not even passive-aggressive messages, no birthdays acknowledged, no fake updates. They just vanished. And for the first time in my life, I realized how easily they could. The holidays were the first real test. Thanksgiving came and went. No group text, no invite. I made pasta, opened a bottle of wine, and didn't touch my phone. I waited, even though I didn't want to admit I was waiting, but it never rang. Christmas was stranger. I booked a flight to Seattle. Didn't tell anyone. Spent the week walking through Pike Place Market, reading at a small cafe that overlooked the water, wandering into bookstores I didn't need to be in. It was cold, quiet, and for the first time in years, I didn't have to perform. No fake smiles, no fake laughter. No, you're so quiet lately, is something wrong? Nothing was wrong. Everything was finally quiet. But peace isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it's just unfamiliar. It wasn't until March that I got the call. Unknown number. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something told me to pick up. My sister's boyfriend, voice shaky, said she'd been in a car accident. Not serious, but her phone was dead. She was panicking, and she told him to call me, that I'd help. I remember looking at the wall across from me as he spoke, like I was watching myself from the outside. I said, I'm sorry she's going through that, but I can't be that person anymore. There was silence. Then he just said, I understand, and hung up. I stood there after the call, half expecting some tidal wave of guilt to hit. It didn't. It wasn't pride either, just clarity. For once, I was choosing myself. Weeks passed. I didn't hear anything else. I figured that was it. Until one afternoon, I found a letter in my mailbox. No return address, no markings, but I recognized the handwriting. It was my sister. I hesitated before opening it. I don't know why. Maybe part of me didn't want to ruin the silence, but I did. It wasn't long, just a single sheet. No emotional confessions, no dramatic language. It was a list, bullet points, plain facts. February 2018, rent $1,100. May 2019, vet bill from Arlie, $420. August 2020, plane ticket to visit dad, $387. December 2021, laptop replacement, $1,200. Groceries, car repairs, credit card fees, quiet moments I'd forgotten, logged like receipts. At the bottom, she wrote, I don't remember saying thank you for most of this. I should have. That was wrong. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know I remember. That was it. No number. No signature beyond her name. I stood in my kitchen holding that letter for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just felt heavy. Not in a bad way, just the weight of everything we never said finally landing in one place. I didn't respond. I still haven't. But I didn't throw it away either. I folded it carefully and tucked it into the back of my bookshelf, behind some old receipts and spare keys I don't use. Not because I want to keep it forever, but because something in me needed to. And that's the thing. I don't hate them. I don't even want revenge. What I want is distance. And for the first time, I have it. The kind of distance that doesn't need blocking or deleting or yelling. Just space. Real, clean space where no one expects anything from me. And I don't spend hours wondering if I'm a bad person for being tired. I don't miss them. I miss the version of them I used to believe in. But that's okay. Some people heal by rebuilding, others by walking away. Me, I kept walking, and I didn't look back.